AFC North and AFC South. Are these teams contenders or pretenders?
Go ahead, Speedy.
All right, we'll start in the North. We'll start with the last place team, the Cincinnati Bengals from last year. They're still pretenders. They're still on the rebuilding side. I mean, I think they have a better roster than they're giving credit for, but they're still not contenders this year. Joe Burrow, I think, will play well. He has some nice receivers. Question will be with the offensive line. It's because that offensive line, it does get Jonah Williams back. They had some interior guys who played well, but it's still questionable. They just signed Joe Mixon, which is a nice signing for them. He should play better than he did last year, but that defense is still concerning, especially against the run up the middle. So they'll be improved. They'll be like a 6-10 team, but I don't think any more than that. The Browns, they should bounce back, but they're still pretenders to me just because they lost so much on defense between their pass rush and their linebackers. They lost both of their starting linebackers from last year and really didn't replace them. They're relying on two youngsters to really fill the void. Another defense that was really bad against the run. Their pass rush is nice. Their corners are nice. But again, Myles Garrett could get suspended again for all we know, and that's another thing that worries me. And then there's their offensive line. They drafted one guy, nice. They signed Conklin. It'll be improved, but how much improved is the other question. So they're still pretenders to me. New coach. Anything's better than Kitchens, but still a lot of unquestions. I think they'll be like 8-8, but not contenders this year. Steelers, I think they'll be contenders. I think they'll be wild card contenders. I don't know about division winners. I think the Ravens have this one on lock. Steelers will definitely improve, getting some offensive skill players back, but there's still a lot of question marks with the injuries on that side of the ball. Their offensive line did regress a little last year. Their defense played well, but will it play as well as it did last year? That's another question to look at it itself. Their corners are still questionable, and their run defense was a little down last year. So they'll be right on the fringe. I feel like they'll either be the first team out or the last team in, the Steelers. And the Ravens, they're the best team in football, I think.
You're always the first one in and the last one out.
Right, and they've been collapse prone the last 2 years, which is another thing that scares me. Even last year when they had everything against them, they were 8-5 and had that spot for a while. Then they lost the last 3 games, including to your New York Jets. So that concerns me a little. As for the Ravens, I think they're the best team in football. I think maybe they'll regress a little, not 14-2, but 12-4, 11-5. They should be fine. They should be a top 2 seed, no problem. They're the best team in football right now. Had one of the best drafts, one of the best offseasons.
Well, Cincinnati Bengals, I think they are pretenders, and not because I think Joe Burrows is going to have a bad season. I just think that this defense is going to have to be redeveloped. This is another year with the same coach. I think the breakdown of what this team is going to be this year is what we're going to see from what the quarterback is going to develop into. I do think they have some weapons on the outside, and they did bring back Green. I want to see how he works with A.J. Green. He grew up a big A.J. Green fan. That's why they decided to bring him back and give him the franchise tag for $17 million. I'm looking forward to seeing how much, lightning and thunder they can put out on the field together. I think they'll make some good plays. I just think they're pretenders. Cleveland, I think they're definitely pretenders. I don't think they're going to be any good. Baker Mayfield, this might be the last year as a starting quarterback in the NFL. I think they'll be looking for another starting quarterback in next year's draft. There's a couple of them, Fields being one of them. I wouldn't be so surprised if the Browns fall apart this year. They draft another quarterback in the first round, and if Justin Fields is there anywhere between 1 and 12, where I think the Browns will be drafting, they will draft Justin Fields. I don't think this team is very good defensively. I think they're missing a lot of people, like you were saying, Speedy. Their linebackers are depending on rookies to do the most important part of the front seven, being the leader and being the guy that's calling the plays at the line of scrimmage. I don't trust a young player to do that. And I don't trust Odell Beckham staying healthy. I don't trust any of the players staying healthy. I think they're all over the place. Kareem Hunt is still there. I don't understand some of the things that they're doing right now in the offseason. They do have a top running back right now, and they bring Kareem Hunt back. It doesn't make sense. So, all in all, with a new GM, a new coach, they're going to be the same old Cleveland Browns. Pittsburgh, I would say they're pretenders too. I don't think bringing back Ben Roethlisberger, they're bringing back the same practical team, making that trade for Mika Fitzpatrick in the at the trade deadline last year really helped their defense, really transitioned their defense. But all in all, I still don't like their secondary. I'm questioning their front seven. They do have Watt, who looks like is going to be a star player. I mean, they've got some good players and good pieces. I don't trust Ben Roethlisberger, and as good as their offensive line has been the last couple of years, could they stay healthy the whole season with the running game that they have and with the players that they have on the offense? I don't know if they can, so I think they're pretenders. And the Baltimore Ravens, I think they're going to be a contender, obviously. I think they're one of the most talented, if not the most talented team in the NFL right now. None of their players are taking off or have COVID-19 or walking away from COVID-19. So they're going to be at full strength, which is a benefit to Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, a third year, could be an opportunity for him to win a Super Bowl where he's going to make $50 million like his good old friend Patrick Mahomes. So I think they're going to have a very good season. Adding some defensive help in the offseason really is going to benefit them and help them add some depth. I think Baltimore is one of my Super Bowl contenders. So.
Alrighty, AFC South. We'll start with Jacksonville. They're obviously pretenders. They're purging everybody. Miles Jack and some of those receivers are going to be next in terms of getting traded. So they're obviously pretenders. I think they're actively tanky at this point. The Colts, I think they're going to definitely be contenders. I think their defense has definitely had some ups and downs, but they're still pretty good and they're very well coached.
They added some defensive help.
Yeah,
too.
They did, and I think Jonathan Taylor's a nice addition to that team. Drafting him, I didn't love him as a prospect in
How about the
comparison
kid from
to
San
most.
Francisco?
Yeah, right. DeForest Buckner. Yeah, that definitely does help as well. Going back to Taylor, though, he's definitely the pure runner they've needed for a while. They haven't had that kind of thing. Marlon Mack's a nice complimentary back, but he's very up and down. So I think Taylor definitely helps. They still have the best offensive line in football, and their receivers were hurt a lot of last year, so that'll help them too. I could see them winning the division. I think them and the Titans, it'll be a very interesting bout. Both could be tied for all we know. I think they're definitely contenders. I think they'll be either a playoff team, a wild card team, or they'll win the division depending on the tiebreakers. The Titans, I think, are still contenders. I think they're one of the most talented teams in the league. I don't think they got significantly worse, but again, their draft, I think, could have been better. They lost Jarrell Casey. That'll hurt. They signed Vic Beasley. We'll have to see how that ends up working out. But they're still very talented. Their receivers will end up making another step. I think they did overpay Tannehill. I did not like that. So I think he'll regress a little. And I think the offense as a whole will regress a little, but their defense is still very strong and deep. So they're still contenders.
By the way, that kid Colin Hughes is star. 2 goals and assists in this game. Yeah. Defenseman.
Absolutely.
These Hugh brothers are, man. Could you imagine what Jack's going to do when he figures things out?
No, I believe it. Jack's going to be some player.
I'm gonna laugh at Mikey C and all those guys that said that what's his name, Makaki, whatever his name is, Capo Caco becomes. They think that he's going to be a better player than Jack Hughes. Boy, oh boy, they're going to be surprised what this kid's going to be when he figures things out.
Yeah, definitely. So that rounds out with the Texans, who I think are pretenders. They lost way too much, and they're always injury-prone anyway. Bill O'Brien, what are you doing? I mean, you had probably the worst offseason.
Billy is going to play with his Willie at the end of the season.
Yeah, pretty much. He might, not even at the end of the season. He might be fired within the first 4 games, for all we know. I mean, Deshaun Watson could keep him in it, but, I mean, you bring in a running back that hasn't been good in 3 years. You bring in, you have receivers that are all fragile. You have a defense that's good, but still has some question marks. They lost a little bit in that secondary. And they've lost some pieces too, and they're just naturally an injury-prone team. So I think they fall off. I think they're kind of an average team, probably somewhere between 6-10 and 8-8, but not contenders.
All right, Jacksonville. I think they're pretenders. They're going to be one of the worst teams, if not the worst team in the NFL. Trading off Fournette, waving off Fournette, and pretty much trading off pieces to this team. You saw what they did with Ngakoue. I think they're just trying to wait for Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is the next guy that they want to bring in. They have a good young quarterback, but I guess they don't believe that he's the future of the organization. I could see them trading him away too. This is a team that's expecting to lose in a season that nobody's looking forward to in a lot of people's eyes. But I think they're pretenders. As far as Indianapolis, I think they're absolutely contenders. Adding Phillip Rivers is going to make them that much better. They have a consistent quarterback that can make the throws. They have wide receivers. They have one of the best young wide receivers in football. They're very explosive. They have a good running game, another good run, and they have one of the best. They have the best offensive line in football. And their defense is a lot better than they were last year. They added some pieces to that defensive line. They lost some pieces in their secondary, but gained some pieces in the defensive line. So they're going to be a team that's going to go at you and try to get to the quarterback, and that's the way they're going to play defense.
Full year of Darius Leonard, too. He was hurt last year.
So I like them. Tennessee Titans. I think they're absolutely contenders again this year. I don't like Tannehill, and a full season with Tannehill, I think they're going to make a trade for a quarterback. I think there'll be quarterbacks that are going to be available, veteran quarterbacks, that will be available at the trade deadline. I do not believe, by the way, that Tannehill will be the starting quarterback going into the playoffs this year. That I could probably bet you. I think they overpaid Tannehill because he had a great playoff, even though he only threw 70 yards the first game, 70 yards the second game, and about 90 yards the third game. So
Yeah, I think the game they lost was the only one he threw 100 yards in.
I mean, he didn't throw a lot. I mean, and they gave him a lot of money. They gave him $70 or $80 million. It just didn't make any sense. That's a lot of money for a guy that I don't think is a starting quarterback in the NFL. So I would have went after Nick Foles. I think that's the guy I went. And the Bears landed him, and I think that was a good move by the Bears. But I think Mitchell Trubisky is the guy for them, and we will talk about that. I think Mitchell Trubisky is still a good quarterback, and I think he'll prove himself this year again.
Mitch Trubisky saving the Titans. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, I do.
Alrighty.
Mitch Trubisky going where?
You said he's saving the Titans because you think the Bears will start Foles and that they'll trade Trubisky to the
No,
Titans?
I'm saying that Mitchell Trubisky is going to win the job from the Bears, and you're not going to see Nick Foles.
Oh, okay.
Because I think Mitchell Trubisky is a good player.
Alrighty.
And the Houston Texans are pretenders. They trade away their best wide receiver, arguably the best wide receiver in the league. They added a running back that hasn't been good for a couple of years. Their quarterback play is I feel bad for Deshaun Watson. He's going to get killed. Their offensive line's better, but not that much better. I mean, they overpaid Jeremy Tunsil. I mean, this team is just all in a wreckage. I do believe that they're going to fire their coach O'Brien before the season's end, and they're going to have to move on. And I think Deshaun Watson's going to want his way out of there. I just don't see Deshaun Watson going to sign that extension. I think he's going to play his cards right. He's going to get franchised. He's going to make his $30-35 million, and I think eventually he'll want his ass out of there. So I do not believe he'll be a Texan for his whole career. And that is it. Those are our picks, and we will get into where we think them going to the playoffs and stuff like that, and our thoughts to that, and who we think are Super Bowl championship contenders. But we went through all the AFC, and it's going to be interesting. This is going to be an interesting season this year with no crowd. Tom Brady on a different team. Cam Newton playing for the Patriots.
A lot of moving parts this offseason. You're just talking about Hopkins. That's another.
Let's see the development of Sam, how he's going to develop with some of the players that he has, and is this offensive line going to stay together and hold the fort so it gives Sam a little bit more time to maybe make plays. I still think they're 2 or 3 pieces away from being a contender.